How's it going, YouTube? It's your boy Salmon Sauce, and I have something a little bit different for today's video. It's December, Christmas time is near, and the holiday season is upon us. All of these Christmas songs are playing all over the place, and it really got me thinking, you know, who would win in a battle to the death? Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer or Frosty the snowman? I know everyone's dying to hear my thoughts about this battle, but before we get into the video, please make sure to subscribe if you're new, and also hit the like button, or else I will tie your arms to one horse and tie your legs to another horse, and then make those horses run in opposite directions. Now, first and foremost, we have to discuss the setting for this fight. Where would Rudolph and Frosty fight each other to the death? Obviously, it can't be anywhere hot because Frosty will melt and there won't be much of a battle at all. The place that makes the most sense would be the North Pole because it's very cold. Frosty is at his strongest in the very cold weather up there. And the reason we're not going to do the South Pole is because Rudolph is from the North Pole. He'll have a home court advantage, so that way it sort of evens out. Rudolph has home court advantage, and it's very cold, which is helpful for Frosty. Now, next we need to discuss the alliances. I think it would only make sense that Santa sides with Rudolph because Rudolph is his most helpful reindeer. Rudolph helps guide his sleigh at night, so Santa has to help Rudolph in this fight. And you know that the elves are gonna come in to help Rudolph too because Santa is their boss. Whatever Santa says goes, so the elves will also be on Rudolph's side. Now, I know some people may disagree, but I think the remaining reindeer will be joining Frosty. Many people would typically think that the other reindeer would help Rudolph, because wouldn't they want to help their own? No, wrong. Sure, at the end of the song, the other reindeer cheered with glee and said that Rudolph will go down in history. However, I disagree. Let me remind you guys, at the beginning of the Rudolph song, the other reindeer never let Rudolph join in their reindeer games. Even at the end of the song, they never mentioned if Rudolph was involved in any of these reindeer games after he led Santa's sleigh. I think the only reason that the other reindeer cheered with glee and said Rudolph would go down in history is simply because Santa was there. And obviously, after Rudolph did such a heroic act for Santa, I don't think Santa would have stood for any type of disrespect to Rudolph. I personally sense a little bit of jealousy coming from the other reindeer, and that's why I believe the reindeer are going to side with Frosty, because they are jealous of Rudolph. They are jealous that Rudolph is Santa's favorite, so the other reindeer are going to side with Frosty, but that's okay with Santa because Santa can always replace the other reindeer. There's plenty of reindeer in the world, but nowhere else in the world will you find a reindeer like Rudolph with a shining nose that can guide his sleigh. None of the other reindeer can do that. So Santa will be picking Rudolph over all the other reindeer, and the other reindeer will side with Frosty. Now, this fight between Rudolph and Frosty is going to be a one-on-one, so these alliances are only going to help train Rudolph and Frosty. Now, how could this training help? Well, for Frosty, clearly the other reindeer know Rudolph very well, and they are going to tell Frosty all of Rudolph's weaknesses. They're gonna give him all sorts of advice. Oh, go for his back leg, that's his weak spot. All sorts of stuff like that. And what the elves will help Rudolph with is the elves are going to build armor for Rudolph. And Santa will be the chief of designing this armor for Rudolph. Now we need to discuss the advantages of disadvantages of each side. Let's start with Frosty. Frosty has hands. Rudolph has 4 legs. Those hands could help Frosty hold weapons. It would be unfair to give Frosty guns, so let's just say for this fight, Frosty's weapon of choice is a sword. Now, Rudolph's armor is going to help protect him from the sword, but there are still parts including his head that are exposed, and Frosty could take advantage of that, and that's a very huge point for Frosty's side. Now let's discuss Frosty's other huge advantage. Now, in Frosty's song, they said that he melted away, but don't worry because he will be back one day. So what does this mean? This means Frosty has mastered reincarnation. It doesn't matter what you do to Frosty. You can slice him in half, you can melt him, he is going to come back. Now in the song it says he'll be back next year, but the reason he'll be back next year is because in the area that Frosty was made, it was no longer winter, so that's why Frosty melted away. So what he said by I'll come back next year is he will come back when it's cold again. So since this fight is going on in the North Pole, Frosty can build himself back up immediately. Now many of you are probably thinking, how the hell is Rudolf gonna withstand this? If Frosty can reincarnate and hold a sword, what the hell is going to stop Frosty? Well, this is where his weaknesses come in. So Frosty first came to life when the kids put the hat on his head. Frosty was not alive until the hat was placed on his head and he began dancing around. What does this mean? It means the hat is Frosty's power source, and the only way to defeat Frosty is for Rudolf to take control of the hat and destroy it. Once the hat is destroyed, Frosty will cease to exist. Now, considering Frosty's massive advantages, that is a huge disadvantage to have, because once the hat is ripped to shreds, Frosty is finished and he will be dead. Now for Rudolf's advantages and disadvantages. Now, Rudolf's first advantage we discussed was the armor. Also, a huge advantage of Rudolf is flight. Rudolf could use his flight to fly over Frosty, grab the hat, and try to destroy it. Not only that, Rudolf has antlers to hold Frosty in place. He can attack him with it. Those antlers are a vicious, vicious tool that Rudolf could use against Frosty. Also, his nose that emits red light is very likely to also release some form of heat, and that heat could be used to melt away parts of Frosty. Now, melting him isn't going to kill him, but it's definitely going to distract him, and it's going to be a great weapon for Rudolf to take advantage of in trying to obtain his hat. Based on these advantages and disadvantages I just named, I believe the fight will go as follows. Rudolf will immediately start the game in the air and flying. Clearly this gives a height advantage to Rudolf and he's able to fly up into the air, and Frosty can't do anything about that. Rudolf will constantly be flying down and flying back up trying to obtain his hat, and Frosty will be defending himself with the sword. Rudolf, realizing he doesn't want to injure himself too badly, decides that he's going to have to sacrifice in order to win this fight, because he can't just dive in there or else he's going to get pierced by the sword. So Rudolf will fly full speed towards Frosty, antlers first, and Frosty will have to swing and he's going to cut off one of Rudolf's antlers. Once one of the antlers is cut off, Rudolf is going to use his other antler to disarm Frosty. Rudolf will then use his weight advantage and his head and antler to push Frosty down into the ground. And then Frosty is going to grab Rudolf's face and start biting at his red nose. This would cause some horrific pain to poor Rudolf's nose, so Rudolf will have no choice but to back up and get off of Frosty. Then, taking advantage of this predicament, Frosty will quickly run towards the sword, grab it, and then charge toward Rudolf. Rudolf defends himself with his other remaining antler, but then he loses that antler while trying to defend himself. But he was once again able to disarm Frosty, and then this time he pushes Frosty down with his front legs and immediately takes a bite out of Frosty's carrot nose and starts chewing on it and spits it in Frosty's face. Frosty will be screaming in pain and terror, and then Rudolf will grab his hat and rip it to shreds. Once the hat is destroyed, Frosty is frozen in place and can't move, so then Rudolf goes over and melts him away with his body heat and his nose heat. So I believe that Rudolf's flying advantage and his antlers were really what were able to help him, and the body armor definitely protected him from a lot of hits that could have been devastating for his chances to win. So the high ground was a huge advantage for Rudolf. My opinion on this outcome is pretty positive. I myself am rooting for Rudolf in this situation. Honestly, I think Frosty is just a useless man made out of snow that dances around all day and does nothing productive, but Rudolf helps Santa bring gifts to kids, and that is priceless. So not only do I think Rudolf wins, I think he deserves to win. And I think a lot of others would agree with me on that Rudolf is more valuable than Frosty when it comes to leaving an impact in our society. And that's pretty much everything I have to say about this fight. I hope you guys enjoyed my views on Rudolf tenderizing Frosty. Let me know down in the comment section who you guys think would win this fight and why. And once again, remember to subscribe, turn on notifications, and hit the like button. I'm still going to be releasing more 2K videos as well as other different videos sort of like this one. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Thank you all for watching and have a splendid day. Hey!